Today, the city of Seward is a big fishing town. It's known for its beautiful bays, Mount Marathon, and sea life.
It also has a rich history, one that began with the need for a railroad. Laurel, what made Seward a good place to set up shop?
Well, in 1898, an official exploring party came into Resurrection Bay. Noticed there were 4 or 5 houses built along the shore, and then they reported that a railroad could be built from there up to Sunrise, which was a mining town at the time for gold, kind of close to where Hope is today. But there wasn't much interest in building a railroad then. But then in the early 1900s, someone came up with the idea of connecting the coast of Alaska to the interior with a railroad. And so a surveying and engineering party arrived in Resurrection Bay and disembarked from the Santa Ana steamship on August the 28th, 1903. You had brothers John and Frank Ballane, who were representatives of the Alaska Central Railroad, along with a W.M. Whittlesley, who laid out the town.
So you're saying the way Seward is laid out today was because of planning done in the early 1900s?
That's right. However, the surveying chain never made the steamship. And so these guys had to improvise, and they cut links from baling wire and used a tailor's cloth measuring tape to lay out the city lots. So these men used traditional means of laying out grid-type city blocks and wide streets, just like lots of the railroad towns in the lower 48 were laid out at the time. And I think optimism must have been very high for this little town at the foot of Mount Marathon, because one of the first street names that they named was Millionaire's Row for all of the prospectors who were mining gold out of the creeks and streams. Of course, then they also named one of the streets Homebrew Alley for maybe another more obvious reason. But then you got the start of Seward, named for Secretary of State Seward, was ready to go and make its own way.
So it sounds like Seward getting off to a pretty good start, but things would come to a bit of a halt as that railroad would go bankrupt?
The Alaska Central Railroad did get a really good start, and they were planning to connect from the coast of Alaska all the way up through the coal fields in Matanuska and then on into the gold fields up near Fairbanks. And lots of railroad workers came into Seward. At one time, its population was 3,500. But in 1908, the railroad did go bankrupt. It reemerged in 1910 as the Northern Railroad and continued construction then of the single-track standard gauge line.
Unfortunately, things would continue to deteriorate for that railroad. In 1915, the U.S. government steps in.
By 1915, the railroad was pretty defunct, yes. The U.S. government then chose Seward as its saltwater terminus for its Alaska Railroad, and construction then, as we know, went on to connect Seward up to Fairbanks and then birthed Anchorage along the way.